Hello, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm Patrick O'Riordan, the Director of the Department of Building Inspection. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to ask questions, share your perspective, and offer your advice on how we can improve. Hearing from you is a critical part of our improvement efforts, and we are fortunate to have you as our partners. Now, we have important updates today about the new PermitSF initiative, our new hours of operation, the Concrete Building Safety Program, and DBI's Code Streamlining Committee. After that, we'll open up to the floor to general questions and comments.
Hey, Patrick, you're on mute.
Patrick, we lost you. You're on mute there.
Okay, did it just mute just now?
Yeah.
To kick off today, we have Ned Siegel, Mayor Lurie's Chief of Housing and Economic Development, who's going to share a little more about PermitSF and the Mayor's vision for improving construction permitting in San Francisco. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Ned.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Patrick, and thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to spend time with the city as we explore how we can serve you all better. PermitSF was announced probably 90, 80, 85 or so days ago, and this is our work to make it easier for us to build more housing and for existing housing to be changed more easily and to help small businesses. And what we're doing is working across departments with the leadership team that's on the video here. It's led by Rich Hillis, Patrick, Liz Waddy, I see Rebecca, and I see Katie Tang as well, are all parts of the leadership team. And we are adding somebody from DPW and from fire as well, because we recognize that if we want to make it easier to build more housing, if we want to make it easier for small businesses, we really must work across departments to look at our existing code, all of this incredibly good intent that we've layered on top of other good intent that may not be serving us and may not be serving all of you as well as it could. This will include some legislation, which you will see in May, which we will put forward to the Board of Supervisors, and some changes that will come that should hopefully make it easier for people to work with the city. It will include changes to our technology that we use to make sure that we are transparent through the permitting process, that things move quickly from one department to another, that we're using common technology to deliver great outcomes for all of you. And it will include us learning how we can all work better together, both through process, through culture, through structure, to make sure that we're delivering the best possible outcomes for all of you. I'm new to City Hall, but as somebody who grew up here and who's raising a family here and has been a business leader in the community, I recognize that this is a place where there's always opportunity for us to do better. And I've been incredibly heartened over the last few months to work with this team and see that they too know that we can do even better, delivering for all of you, being more predictable, making it easier and faster to get through our processes, and to be transparent about where you stand as you're working through our processes. We look forward to opportunities like today and others to hear and learn from all of you to make sure that as we work through these changes, that we deliver the best possible outcomes for all of you. Now, when you see the legislation that we propose in May, I want you to know this is just a start. And so if there's something that you feel passionately about that you don't feel we've addressed, my ask of all of you would be that you present the problems to us. It's great to hear if you have ideas of what the solutions may be. We may have alternative solutions that we'd propose, but most important is that we hear from you what the problems are, that you know that this is not a one and done. This will be a whole year of work on our part to deliver better outcomes for all of you. With that, let me turn it back to Patrick, Rich, and the team who will take it from here. Thank you all.
Patrick Hannon, do you want to just introduce Rich, or will we go right to him?
Yeah, next up we have Rich Hillis, the planning director, who's going to present on PermitSF. Once Rich is done, we'll take some questions, and we'll also take questions at the end of today. Take it away, Rich.
Great, thank you. And I think we have a presentation here to just help frame the discussion. But feel free when we're done to give us questions. I'll also put my email and cell phone in the chat. So if you have ideas in questions or suggestions as this moves forward, please feel free to reach out. And again, I've been the planning director for 5 years now, but I've worked in the city in land use and development for about 25 years. I sat on the planning commission for 8, so have been in and around this process for most of my career. And I like to tell the story, even as planning director, if I get a constituent call or a constituent email that someone is stuck in our permit process, it tends to be one of the first calls, besides maybe the mayor's or Ned's, that I respond to. Prior to PermitSF, I would be somewhat relieved if the problem was not a planning problem, if it was DPW's problem or DBI's problem or another agency, which I think is kind of endemic to the system. Like, we all need to be responsible for the permitting process from start to finish, and make sure that it's transparent, it's customer centric, that there is a knowledge up front when someone comes in and applies for a permit, that they know the process, how many agencies or departments need to touch this, and generally how long it's going to take to get to the end. So we can move to the next slide, which I think touches on the broader experience, the broader goals of PermitSF, again, to make this more customer focused, to make the process fast, but also predictable and transparent. Again, when you come in and apply for a permit, you should know generally how long it's going to take to get to the other side and the permit issued, and generally which agencies in kind of the process it's going to take to get there. So we'll move to the next slide. I'd also say, I've been around enough to see different attempts at kind of resolving some of our permitting issues and some of our process issues. I think we as departments all, when Mary Lurie took over, prepared a briefing memo to him and his team, and all recognized that our permitting system is siloed, that it's not terribly efficient, that we don't necessarily have insight into what DBI is doing. DBI doesn't necessarily have insight into what other agencies are doing or have control over that process. And I think what's different about this effort is you have Ned and the mayor making this a priority of the administrations and looking for any and all solutions. So they could be process-oriented solutions, they could be technology solutions. We may need to change the code. We may ultimately need to change kind of the structure of how we're organized to really kind of make good on the promises that we have as part of PermitSF. So those are the buckets that this slide is getting at. To, again, structural, do we need to change how departments are structured or where certain functions sit in agencies, or looking at our charter, do we need commissions weighing in on certain aspects of the work? Do we need to consolidate commissions or advisory groups or even departments? Technology, we know some agencies have moved forward with technology solutions and new technology, while others have technology that needs to be updated. We want to make those decisions that are being made done across agencies and thoughtfully across agencies. We may need to change the code. I mean, I know we do need to change the code. We've got a package of code changes that are going and moving forward in the first 100 days. But as Ned said, we're gonna continue to update our code, especially where we're doing things that may go beyond what the state requires. And then we just know we need to change how we look at the process and how we help customers and clients get to yes on permits and projects. Next slide. So the mayor, as Ned talked about, issued an executive directive about 70 days ago or so. So in May 23rd is the 100th day of that executive directive. And it laid out, the group that's working on this, and as again, Ned kind of pointed out, the various agencies that are involved. We've expanded that beyond the initial group of folks, recognizing that DPW, fire, DPH, and others need to be part of this and part of the decision making if we're going to resolve the customer's experience from start to finish. But it laid out specific actions that the mayor wanted us to take on in the first 100 days. We're not limited to this. We'd love your input on those that are more important or things we need to add to that list. But I'll highlight a couple here. One, establishing permit processing deadlines. So people often call them shot clocks and performance targets in our work. We know that the state has determined and kind of come up with various shot clocks for work. We want to look at this across the entire permitting journey and come up with shot clocks that make sense for you as those that are seeking permits. We want to centralize technology decision making, and this is already in the works. We're working with the Mayor's Office of Innovation to look at our systems across agencies and look to solutions that will make it so our customers feel like there is one technology that all departments are working on. There's one front door. You can get access and information on where your permit is, and ultimately get that permit when the permit's closed out and approved. We're working on a suite of code changes that includes eliminating the need to get a permit for tables and chairs on sidewalks. We're eliminating the need to get a minor encroachment permit in many aspects. We're eliminating the need to get a variance when strictly rebuilding stairs or a deck or some other portion of a building that's in the rear yard. We're eliminating additional CUs that may be required for ground floor space, especially downtown, as it relates to office or office adjacent type properties. So we'll be announcing those suite of code changes in the next couple weeks, but we've started to compile a list of kind of the next phase of code changes. So also want to hear from you. Many of these ideas have come from you and your colleagues that have been suggested over the years or in the last 70 days. We can move on to the next slide. There are also in the executive directive laid out actions that we're to accomplish in the first 1 year. So I'll highlight a couple of those, like recommend amendments to the city charter, and the city is going through a broader exercise to look at potential charter changes and how the city is organized. We think that's applicable to the permitting function as well, and looking at how we may want to change how we're organized so that we can be more efficient across agencies in the permitting functions. We want to allow for any and all permits to be filed online and have one front door for those to be filed online. We're looking at our various codes, including the building code, to see where we may exceed state requirements in just questioning why we do, and perhaps recommending that changes should be made for us to align to state requirements where appropriate. And we're going to launch the first phase of the technology solution for permitting. Next slide, please. So just shifting gears briefly, this is something that has come about, in us looking at data in when customers visit us at the permit center. And, we have seen through the data that we're turning away customers at the end of the day where we don't have enough time to review an over-the-counter permit. People do come early in the morning, but certainly less so based on the data than towards the end of the day. So we are basically shifting the hours to be open later, Monday through Friday, open till 5 p.m. in shifting our opening hours from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. We recognize some folks did come at 7 a.m. or 7:30, but we were seeing more clients turned away at the end of the day. So we wanted to shift our hours to meet the needs of our customers. We're also shifting the later opening from Wednesday to Monday. So Monday will be open 9 to 5, all other days 8 to 5. Next slide. Again, more on the hours. We find the shorter wait times are in the morning. And again, we're trying to get to everybody at the end of the day, but queues may close early if we're experiencing higher volumes later in the day. Next slide, please. We've done an extensive amount of outreach. I mean, this is one of the ways we're trying to reach out to folks to let us know where we're moving that they agree with, or what more we should do to make changes to the permitting process. We have received tremendous feedback. You're able to go to the PermitSF website and give us specific feedback if you want to there. You can do it here. You can email or call us, but we find it invaluable to hear from you all as to where things are getting stuck, where the pain points are, and where we can make improvements. So please continue to do that. You can reach out to any one of us on the PermitSF team or go through the website. So I think with that, we are happy to open it up to questions, comments, suggestions, or anything else that's on your mind. And I should say the entire PermitSF kind of leadership team is here. So Patrick, you've heard from Katie Tang, who's the executive director of the Office of Small Business, Rebecca, who runs our permit center, and Liz Waddy, who is the director of current planning here at Planning.
Kelly, do you want to tell folks how they can ask a question? And then folks, if you have a question for anybody on the PermitSF team or for Ned Siegel, this is the opportunity. Take it away, Kel.
Yeah, so just a brief rundown. If you have any questions or feedback, if you're joining us on your computer or the Teams app, all you have to do is raise your hand, click on the raise hand button that should be at the top of your screen. And once I call your name, you can go ahead and unmute. And if you are dialing in on your phone, all you have to do is press *5 to raise your hand. And then when I call your name, press *6 to unmute and then mute back again when you're done with your question. And I see we have some folks with some questions.
Do we want to stop sharing the screen too, so we can, I don't know if people can.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
See us better.
All right, so our first question is from GBA Incorporated. Go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know your question.
Yeah, this is David Penn with GBA. Thank you all. Ned, nice to see you on this call. Really appreciate your efforts leading this charge. I have so many questions, but I'll reserve them for, so other folks have time to ask questions. But a couple of comments I just wanted to make. Just in direct response to Rich's presentation, there was the OTC process in San Francisco. I feel like I sound a little bit like a broken record, but there are many things to criticize about permitting and entitlement processes in San Francisco. But I just want you to know that the OTC process is best in class, maybe not even in the state, maybe nationally. And I think that is a process that is very important that it be protected and emulated insofar as it can be to speed up and clarify other processes within the departments. That's just one that would be, I really hope that the importance and the excellence of that process is understood and utilized as kind of an example insofar as it can be. And just when I hear about, things being made electronic, all applications being able to be submitted electronically, that's all great. But there's a little part of me that worries that, the OTC value of that process may not, I'm worried it will get lost. The only other comment that I wanted to provide in terms of process feedback was kind of on the front and back end of permitting. A couple of years ago, DBI instituted the completeness review process for in-house permits. And, initially the scope of that and the intent of that was very limited. It was to kind of tranche the intensity of reviews required to kind of better align queues and speed things up. It is since, now is partly in response to state shot clock requirements. But I'm finding as an applicant that it just seems like, it's become a little bit of its own thing and is adding 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes more, to the entire permit process. And if it's saving time later on in the process, it's just not clear. That may be the case, but it seems to me that it's just adding more time at the outset for things that would really be better and more efficiently handled in plan check by the actual approver plan checker. And then on the back end as well, we're noticing a bit of a longer queue and timeline to get permits issued. So I think that there's the new permit report that was instituted that may have maybe implicated in some of those delays. I know some staff has been reorganized again to devote time to more electronic and digital services, but I just wanted to just make that point. Thank you.
Right. Hey, just on, I mean, on your first point about OTC, it's certainly one we've heard before, that, in certainly where things are working, we want to enhance and not necessarily make change. I think our inclination would be to try to bring more scopes of work into the world of OTC if possible. But Patrick, I don't know if you want to address the other comments. I don't think I've heard the last one about the issuance before.
Yeah, 93% of our permits go OTC, and I truly believe it's a very good process and it works well. And we are having discussions with our executive PermitSF team in regards to other things we may be able to bring into the over-the-counter fold, as it were. So just stay tuned for that, because it does make it so that permits get issued really quickly, and we can draw on that and make improvements on something that works well.
Thank you.
Feel free to tell the
Fair question.
Chronicle where things are working too. They tend to only hear about things that aren't working. And
All right. Next up, we've got Ann Cervantes with a question.
Well, they sort of interface with each other. I just have to commend both planning department and DBI for doing an excellent job in doing outreach to people to provide input, especially during COVID, and getting these projects moving forward. And it's been an excellent journey with you. The two things that I want to address, one of them, I work in a diverse range of group of clients, some of them being small businesses owners, some small property owners, nonprofits, and then agency work and affordable housing. So I've got a cadre of different building types. But what I want to say is that in implementing this preliminary plan check, you have it together, but the interface with other agency is a real problem. And it's a problem in that I hear complaints from my civil engineers and my structural engineers that have to do work with other agencies of really nitpicking on these preliminary plan checks when they have 25 and 30 years of experience in working with your agencies. And I know that in the beginning, especially for small projects, for these small property owners, you put your inexperienced staff in doing this intake, and comments like coming back and that the north arrow is not in the right location. Somebody needs to make a decision on whether or not that is a comment to delay it for another 3 months before it's being reviewed. So that really has to be changed, because there's some departments that you don't have any oversight, and I hope you can gain oversight in pulling in one permit center. But these are the complaints that I hear from a lot of structural engineers and civil engineers in town that have to deal with other agencies. So I'm not going to say who those are, but some of the projects have been completed, but other work that needs attached to that project has not even begun. And it's been over a year. So, sometimes I get complaints back from homeowners that are dealing with other agencies. It's been 6 years. That can't happen. So that process has to change. What I want to say is to use as a model, and you started this model during COVID. During permit review, you're using a digital process similar to the process that DSA, the Division of the State Architect, utilizes. With that review process at DSA, we have live meetings to go over with the viewer from the different departments that have to review, so we can have live comments back and then quickly resolve any questions that they have to eliminate the time of going back and forth. Well, this is wrong. And then a new comments come back with another agency, then it has to start the review process over again. So what I'm saying is that you should have a point person, just like what you do with I think it's Mr. Chung that oversees the permits. You should have him just monitor who needs to get signed before the project gets checked out, so you can save time. So those are some of the recommendations I want to make in using a process similar to Division of the State Architect. You guys are almost there in using Bluebeam, but you can use a Bluebeam as having live meetings. So in case there's a clarification that needs to be, it could get resolved quickly. For instance, I was requesting to show that a path of travel already existed to do a curb cut, so that nonprofit didn't have to pay for another curb cut. And I still haven't had that, and it's been over a year to get that thing addressed. So that's what I'm talking about. I think you're almost there. It's been a lot better than it was in the past, but this process in overseeing other departments is really important. Okay. It'll save us smaller businesses a lot of money. Okay. Because right now, with these ABE permits, the small businesses are trying to come over there. In the Mission District, there's a lot of old infrastructure. And some of these buildings, we have to look at alternatives. Some of them, the sidewalks are on more than 3% slope. So how do you gain access to the space? So there needs to be some dialogue to show that to the plan checker so it can get resolved easily. So that's what I see that's out there. And I know that you'll find a solution.
Thank you, Ann. We definitely, it's probably, that's a common theme we hear from most folks, is that, it shouldn't be them that are kind of working the system to figure out where, in what department things are stuck, that we should act as one city in the permitting process. And that certainly is the goal. It's easier said than done, right? Technology will get us some of the way there. Structural change will get us some of the way there. Cultural change will get us some of the way there. But I think that's the overarching goal of this effort.
Thanks again, Ann, for your question. Next up, we have a question from Ace Roofing. Ace Roofing, feel free to unmute your mic. Okay, we will come back to you. Next up, we've got Michael Cristani. Michael, if you could unmute your mic and let us know your question.
Hi, I'm Michael Crisanti with SCB Architects. I'm also a member of the AIASF Public Policy and Advocacy Committee. So we've been participating in the historic design standards, the objective design standard meetings and all. I want to be clear, I'm not speaking for the group here. I'm just speaking as an individual and sort of aggregating some of the stories that we've heard collectively. One of the things we've brought up a couple of times during the course of these conversations during the objective design standards and the historic design standards is to fully computerize all of the records search for any individual property. When we suggested this to staff, they have stood on, historically it's been the responsibility of the applicant to gather all this data. Historically, this stuff was written in pen and ink. It's not written in pen and ink anymore. Now it's all computerized. The city has access to this and have this. We should have these records at hand instantaneously. There's just no reason that can't happen. Secondly, DPW needs to come into the fold. Of this. DPW has historically been its own little fiefdom, and there's a lot of historical record about that. They can hold up projects in and of themselves. I completely applaud the effort that's going on here on the part of DPW planning and the mayor's office. Thank you very much for this. We've been hearing some certain things like this since Art Agnos was mayor, so I really hope that we get some constructive change here. But DPW, a big part of that is bringing DPW into the fold into this process. And lastly, one of the other things that's often very difficult, and our members have noted some frustration with, is the requirements when you have to get other design professionals who have, used their drawings, historic drawings on these things. We've had members that have had to pay for copies of their own drawings of projects that were submitted years ago. It's just this almost Kafkaesque experience that's a little absurd. So I'm going to keep this as brief as possible, and if we could address those three things, that would be, in and of itself, would be quite lovely.
Thanks, Michael. And DPW definitely is part of this. Can you just clarify more on the documents that you wanted access to that you couldn't?
Well,
The
sometimes,
first part of your question.
like for instance, you have to pay for a structural engineer's drawing. Well, we had a member of the PPAC that it was their consultant working on these things, and they had to pay for copies of their own drawings of a project that went to sleep for some years and then came back to life. It's a bit odd to have to do that. So it's again seemingly minor delays that can be overcome via the technology.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have a question from Ronald DiMartini.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm Ron DiMartini with Siemens. The fire alarm permit expediter for the Bay Area. I would say that 70% of my permits are at DBI and 90% of those are over the counter. It's a terrific process, even though it takes 4 stations to get it done. And part of the reason why it's not so cumbersome is the 7:30 starts 4 days a week. So I wanted to ask Rich, he had mentioned about the database showing more people being turned away at the end of the day. Is there any consideration to possibly go back to 7:30?
Hey, if I could ask Rebecca, do you mind chiming in here and just talking more about what the data we looked at and why we chose to move to 8?
Yep, sure can. So it is really just straight numbers. Our volume of customers that are in between 7:30 and 8 is very low. I mean, and that was across the 2nd floor and the 4th floor. So we acknowledge that there are 1 or 2, and it was really that. It was, less than 5 on average people that are in the permit center before 8 o'clock. But our greater need is in the afternoon. And so right now, no, we're not. We're basing our service strictly from the data showing of customer need and when they're showing up. And so we, again, I think Rich had acknowledged, we know that this is hard for a handful of customers right now, but the vast majority of our customer service is being requested in the later afternoon. So
Rebecca, I guess going forward, but you guys will still be kind of watching the data, because what I experience on the fire side, and I could speak for the fire alarm and the fire sprinkler permit expediters, I think, is that by 8 o'clock, the fire counter is starting to fill up for reviews. So if we start at 8, it's going to push us back more than a half an hour. So I was just wondering, as we move on here and things look a little backed up, if there might be some consideration to possibly go back to 7:30, I don't know, 1 or 2 days a week. I just wanted to throw that out there.
So I think it's a fair question. We'll continue to monitor the data based on need. And then I think Rich mentioned this earlier. Also, our entire portfolio of improvement work will sort of balance this all out. And there will be some technology improvements and, different ways to engage and apply for permits in the future. So, and that's definitely on the immediate roadmap. Our technology infrastructure is aging, and we don't want to create a situation where the only way you can get a permit is to come in and apply in person on paper. We know that there is a community of people that would prefer to do this asynchronously. So I think as we start rolling out the rest of the portfolio and the initiatives, and we address our aging, it's hanging in there, but older technology, I think it'll help take some of the burden off of that also. So you won't see, what we want to do is reduce the overall traffic so people have choice in how they want to engage with us. So
Okay.
the whole balance of, I think, everything will help this problem that you're experiencing right now.
Got it. Okay, so in closing, I just want to reiterate what David mentioned earlier. If you can, please keep the over-the-counter situation at hand, especially with fire. It really is a very nice thing. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
feedback.
Right. Thanks, Ronald, for your feedback. Next up, we've got Mark Brand.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Good. I wasn't sure if I was working because until now I couldn't unmute the mic. Thank you for holding this session, and I'm looking forward to joining you guys in the future. It's a great initiative. It's the first time I've attended, so hoping this will help. I've got a couple of things that I'm hoping you could help me with. Let me just give a little story about, well, several months ago in November or October, I was trying to get an over-the-counter permit, and I thought I was almost there. And then at the last minute, I was told that it was too big to be over the counter after like sending staff to the counter for about 3-4 different visits. And Shulu said, well, don't worry about it. Do an intake. And we're really down to a very slow, very small backup now, 1 month to 6 weeks. And so it won't be a problem doing a regular intake. So I did that, and I'm still working on this permit now, and that was back in October or November. And what he didn't mention is that the actual intake process is 1 month, and they count their clock starting after the intake process is over. So that changes it from 1 month to 6 weeks to 2 months to, what you can do the math. And then all the other departments back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's been driving me crazy and my client. And now they're not paying me because they think I've mishandled the situation. And the latest hangup is Bureau of Urban Forestry. We've gotten everybody else to sign off, and we kind of, through an oversight on part of my staff, missed the fact that we need to get a tree protection permit. And everything else has been approved, and we got the tree protection permit. We tried to get that over the counter. They said, we don't do tree protection permits over the counter, get in line. And so we've been waiting 4 weeks for the tree protection permit. And the person assigned has said they've got up to 2 months to get back to me. And from something that I was told would take 1 month, now we've got 2 months just for the tree protection permit. And I think there should be some process where, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if we kill the tree remodeling this house, put in a new tree. I mean, to wait 2 months to get a tree protection permit, that's a killer for me. And I suspect the Bureau of Urban Forestry is extremely backed up, but that's a rough one. And also the fact that Shulu would say it'd only take a month to a month and a half when he really has no idea how long it will take once you get out of the over-the-counter process. I think everybody should be told, don't tell people how long it will take. It'll take probably 6 months once you get outside the over-the-counter process. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Secondly, I've got another permit situation where we were trying to get a permit over the counter. And I'm taking a lot of small projects right now. So these clients are less patient than the bigger projects. And we were trying to get an over-the-counter permit. We got an over-the-counter permit for an identical project in a neighborhood where the houses are all identical. Didn't know that this was a seismic hazard zone, 2 blocks away from each other. Yeah, either project's a seismic protection zone. After going back and forth 4 times with different plan checkers, the last one said you have to have a soils report and you have to do an intake. And after all the time we spent on this, different people were giving us different stories. They had different plan check comments every time we went in. Finally, it's like, no, absolutely not over the counter. So that was frustrating. I think I've got a third one for you, but I've actually forgotten while I was waiting. But I'm glad you guys have this now. I'll email you if I can think of what the third one was.
Yeah, Michael, it'd be helpful too to follow up with an email on some specifics there. Like what kicked you out of what kicked you to intake on that first project?
On the first project, we were doing an interior remodel, and we were basically taking some of the ground floor space at the back of the garage and making a habitable space.
Yep.
And in the process, we blocked access for the usable outdoor space for the top unit you could no longer go through the garage. So we decided to add a roof deck, and the roof deck kicked us out of, even though it didn't require a planning review, the roof deck seemed to be the deal killer for Chulu, even though planning approved it.
Yeah. Okay, is it Liz or Patrick, do you have anything? I mean, send us the details too.
Yeah, details would be good, and we can do a deeper dive, Mark, and figure out what, it might be a training opportunity for our staff too, if we can find out that something can be looked at a little bit differently maybe. So having some more of the details would be good. Thank you.
Sure. I think at the beginning part of the process too, I feel like there's some inconsistency as to when you need a tree protection permit and when you don't. And it seems like it's random, because I've got projects where there's a tree in front of the house and we haven't been tagged to go through Bureau of Urban Forestry, and other projects where we are. And I think they're very backed up.
All right, well, you're right. We should clarify that. And your point about like when we kick you upstairs, we should be able to tell you how long it's going to take generally and stick to it. So I think Patrick and others, we all share that goal. So
yes.
It's part of the fundamental of this. We don't want to tell you we don't know.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
We want to be more predictable for sure, and that's what we're driving at here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for your question. For time purposes, it'd be great if everyone could limit their comments and questions to 2 minutes. All right, looks like we got a few more. Michael Tyrone, could you please state your question? Michael Tyrone, would you mind unmuting your mic? All right, we'll come back to you in a bit. Next up, we have Pamela Harris.
If Pamela doesn't come on, I'm unmuted and hopefully you can hear me. It's Michael Tyrone.
All right, perfect.
Okay,
go ahead.
Sorry about that, technical issues. Anyway, I wanted to thank everyone, the mayor's office, Ned Siegel, Director Hillis, Director O'Riordan for spearheading PermitSF initiative. Obviously, everyone's super excited about this. I've got 3 questions. Question 1 is, I guess, kind of directed at Mr. Siegel. It's if we aim for a one city permit process, do we have enough real-time data to see where applications get stuck prior to making sweeping legislative changes? Are we tracking days spent in planning review when in-house applications are submitted and are waiting planning approval letters prior to being submitted for in-house review at DBI and getting issued application numbers and tracked on the permit tracking system? Question number 2 is for Mr. Hillis. ED 2501 emphasizes clarity and consistency for applications. Has the planning department considered aligning its code updates with the building code's 3-year cycle instead of frequent incremental changes? Doing so might offer customers more certainty and reduce mid-project confusion. Question number 3 is to Director O'Riordan. Has the city considered reintroducing the concurrent review process for in-house review permits, the pre-January 2024 process, for a limited amount of permits at intake to measure which process is potentially faster, aka A/B test a small amount of permits to see if the concurrent process is slower or faster than the new process, the January 2024 process? Thank you.
Sure, and if we don't, help us too, because you went fast on the question, so if we missed one, let us know. One,
Sure.
on the, do we have the data? I'd say no. I mean, we don't have perfect data, and, you know, there's problems about data across departments too. But I'd say we're not necessarily, you know, trying to make sweeping changes for code changes, at least not yet till we have that data. But I think we're trying to make changes where we know and we have data that clients get stuck. So, you know, they're tending to be more targeted changes or code changes we're making now till we get kind of better systems and better data in place to be able to make kind of the broader changes. But I think departments, you know, have their own data and kind of manage to their own data. But again, I think that just highlights the problem that we need to kind of get consistent data across departments, and that process is starting to do that. On planning code changes, I think you make a good point about trying to do those, you know, when we're making building code changes. I think we have been, you know, we've made a lot of changes to the planning code over the last couple of years, hopefully to simplify things and remove requirements is our goal, at least in this phase. But I think you're right, we could do a better job kind of aligning those with other changes and at least alerting folks who deal with the planning code about those changes. I don't think we're always that great in proactively talking about the changes we've made. We've got, you know, potential project sponsors coming to talk to us about changes like for downtown conversions that we've made. So getting that information out in a digestible format, I think is important. So thanks for that. Patrick, do you want to address the?
Yeah, the concurrent versus the sequential review process concurrent came about in January of 2024, as we all know, and it was based on in-house projects being required to be a digital submittal. We weren't doing any more paper. I don't have data in front of me right now, but I think it's assumed that the concurrent process will be faster than a sequential paper process could ever be, if we're like sequentially passing paper plans between departments. So everyone has access to the same materials for review at the same time. But we can look and see what data we have. Rebecca, do you have any access to any data in that regard, or?
Oh, sorry. Yes, we do have concurrent data, and I think I've played with this with the previous permit services director to look at the efficiency. I think in general, the behavior was that the reviews were happening not concurrently, they were really happening linearly. Like, so but we're happy to look at it again. Because yeah, in theory that it feels like it would make more sense for everybody to be looking together. But I think on a practical note, applicants were waiting for us to make comments for you to respond to. And so we couldn't all be in touching the plan sets together because you're responding to the reviews that are happening on our side. But we can definitely look at the data. I'm happy to keep exploring it. It's the lovely thing about Bluebeam and PTS.
the theory doesn't always become reality, obviously, is what we're,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we're open to the suggestion. We can keep looking at it. It's not I think just practically we saw that the applicants weren't using EPR that way. They were waiting on us.
And apologies, I think you asked a question for Ned, but I think he had to jump off. But I don't know if we can unmute Liz too, if she's got anything to add. I think she's not able to unmute.
Liz, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great.
Great.
Thanks all. I was just going to say, I think one of the comments that was made was around tracking the data on how long the planning approval letters are taking and the time that that's taking. That is certainly data that we are tracking at planning. So we're happy to share that and push that more broadly. I think one of our goals with shifting to the planning approval process, even though it is sequential to get through planning, the idea was really to replicate effectively the site permit process. So that was really one of the few reasons for most projects that we had the site permit process before, was to get through the planning process. So we shifted that to exclusively the planning department, with the idea that then after the planning approval process concluded, folks could then invest in their construction drawings, their structural, their MEP, et cetera, sort of take a minute in between and then be able to file a full building permit where they could get concurrent review. One of the other goals of that is for folks who are doing projects that are producing any level of housing, that building permit being post entitlement would then be protected from appeals, which was also a really important thing that we wanted to facilitate based on recent state law changes. So part of the reason was a need to decouple ourselves from the permit in order to facilitate building permits for housing, to have greater certainty and not have the risk of appeals to implement state law. But we do have that data around the timelines for planning approval letters. Again, our goals, our targets are 30 days for a completeness review and 30 days for first plan check. And the data on our end is that we are, I believe the last I looked at it, either very high 80% or 90% of hitting those two targets. So, but happy to share that data next time in more detail.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Michael. Next, we have a question from Pamela Harris. Pamela, would you be able to unmute your mic? Okay, we will come back to you. Next, we have Ace Roofing San Francisco Incorporated.
I think Pamela might be unmuted. Maybe not.
All right, we will come back to you two later. I'm going to move over to the chat now. Looks like we have a couple of questions there. Larry Smith, is there an effort for training existing plan checkers and better customer service? I've experienced for many years now there are several plan checkers that have negative and sometimes even belligerent attitudes. It seems their goal is to trip you up and delay your permit approval and not assisting you to achieve approval. 75% are helpful, which is great, but I think there remains a culture of negativity and resistance in many staff members.
Patrick, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I'll take the easy questions. So the 75%, we're glad to hear about that out of the gates. We do have ongoing customer service training. We do talk to staff in staff meetings, and the conversation is usually around getting to yes, being respectful. So it's an ongoing effort, and we are trying hard in that regard.
And maybe if I can just add from the planning department perspective, because I wasn't sure if that was directed at DBI or sort of all agencies that are sitting at the permit center. I would say as manager overseeing that unit for planning, I would like to know as a manager, if you do have that experience with any particular employee. I think the best way for us to resolve is to have targeted specific conversations when we get specific feedback. So please don't hesitate to escalate feedback to management in any agency, or if you don't know who to contact, you're welcome to, again, use we've dropped the PermitSF at sfgov.org email address for sort of suggestions in general. So you're welcome to drop in there, suggestion around customer service, and it's fine to provide customer names, and we're happy to drill in.
And that's good for us to know. It can be anonymous, and at least we'll be able to react and make something better if we know where to go to fix something.
And if you're on the floor, just to build on that, so that we have old school little comment cards out all around the floor also. So if you need a reminder to how to get to that because you're here experiencing something, just come to the Permit Center staff. And we have a team of people that are here to receive that feedback and then help you get it filed away, because we realize you're on site and may not remember where that link is. But we have multiple ways to receive that feedback, and we do want to hear it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks again, Larry, for your question. Next, we have a question from Ace Roofing, who says, a couple of questions. Is there a target date to implement the online permit request? What is the turnaround time going to be for the online permit request? And it used to only take about an hour to pull a permit and is now taking 2 to 3 hours.
Rebecca, do you want to take that?
Sure. The larger technology strategy is something that we're working on. So that will not be something we're able to deliver in the first 100 days. Something that we're hoping to begin rolling out in the first year, though. So sort of early 2026. No timeframes yet. So it is a thing that we have requirements for, but we need to begin building it. And then, regarding the things used to be an hour, that time frame is for as long as I've been here has not, which has only been a few years. When you have multiple routing stations involved, it just takes more time. So I would say it probably varies on the type of permit you're pulling. But again, we're open to feedback. So if a no plans permit is taking longer than you think it should, if you think there's excessive process, that is great feedback for us to hear. If you had different experiences in that area previously, and we've changed something.
Great. I'm going to go through one more question from the chat from Larry Smith, who says, does this PermitSF group have jurisdiction over fire plan check processes? I think there's a problem with fire plan check with assembly occupancies. Currently, the project is reviewed by fire plan checkers and then receives additional comments by a different fire agency when you submit the application for the assembly permit. And this is problematic because you receive new comments after the bulk of the project is already completed. I think both fire agencies should review the project at the same time in the initial plan review.
Yeah, I mean, yes, fire is part of this group and part of our effort. Again, we're looking at all agencies that touch the permitting process. I don't know the specifics. I don't know if anybody, Patrick or Rebecca, can address the specific comment.
It is a two-step process, and is on the radar, I think, actually, sort of called out generically as a PDF process that needs to become digital. But the fire department actually reached out this week to start talking about how to streamline the operational permits. So I think that's the second step you're talking about. So we know it can get better, and it is definitely something that's being targeted to fix. Hopefully, hopefully before the end of the year and possibly even sooner.
Great. Thank you everyone for your great questions and feedback so far. We will save more of it at the end. I'm going to hand it over to Patrick, who will introduce the next speaker.
And again, just to reiterate, please reach out to us if you have issues or you've got a specific permitting issue that could help us highlight some areas we can all improve the system. So thank you for your suggestions.
Yeah, we have a better chance of being able to fix things if we know where the pinch points are.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Rich, and thanks, Patrick, and everybody for a great conversation. We're now going to move on to the city's concrete building safety program. We have Laurel Matthews from the Office of Resiliency and Capital Projects. The last week was the earthquake anniversary, so this is a timely conversation. Laurel, take it away.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, everyone. I'm really grateful to be here to talk about some legislation that is currently under review at the Board of Supervisors. My name is Laurel Matthews, as Patrick mentioned. I work in the City Administrator's Office in an office called the Office of Resilience and Capital Planning. And I'm going to try to fly through this if I can so that we can get to your questions and also give Tate some time to present on his program. So to really quickly talk about some of the earthquake programs that have come before, I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with either the unreinforced masonry mandatory retrofit program or the soft story mandatory retrofit program. These two programs together have resulted in almost 6,000 retrofitted buildings across the city, and more than 100,000 residents are now in safer buildings because of these two programs. Our long-term phased seismic safety program in the city also has resulted in voluntary retrofit programs. The private schools evaluation program resulted in all private schools in the city being seismically evaluated, but it was a voluntary retrofit program, not a mandatory. Next slide. Okay, there we go. The next two high priority building types that our earthquake safety implementation program recommends we address are concrete buildings and tilt-ups or original flexible diaphragms. On the left, you can see a photo of a collapse of a concrete building, really tragic. This was the Pine Gold Court building in New Zealand. This building was constructed in the 1960s before modern building codes. We don't expect every concrete building to perform this badly in an earthquake, but this is sort of the worst case scenario that we're trying to avoid. These buildings are, if some of them, the ones we're concerned about, lack sufficient steel reinforcement to withstand a really large earthquake. In San Francisco, these show up most often as office space or multifamily housing. And as some of you may be familiar, if you've done one of these can be really complicated and really expensive, the retrofit of these buildings. The other building type addressed by this program, tilt-ups, these are typically warehouses in San Francisco or retail businesses like grocery stores. The concern here is that the roof is not well attached to the walls and might separate in a large earthquake. And the retrofit of these is both the design and construction of these retrofits are a bit more straightforward, a bit less complex than concrete buildings. So for the last 3 years, the Office of Resilience and Capital Planning and DBI have been working together to develop the concrete building safety program. Next slide, please. To help us figure out how to identify, evaluate, and hopefully retrofit these buildings, we convened a working group of stakeholders who might be affected by a program involving concrete building screening and retrofits. This group discussed social, economic policy considerations related to concrete building retrofitting. This group consisted of some people on this call, as well as nonprofit housing owners, residential commercial building owners, tenants groups, Chamber of Commerce, builders and developers, as well as technical and policy experts and city staff. I won't enumerate all of the recommendations and concerns that were surfaced during the working group process, but I want to quickly just mention that they noted the really high cost of these retrofits as a concern. There was a concerns around potential disruption to tenants if in the case where they needed to temporarily relocate. And we also heard from developers that they would like more assurance from the city that if they do, undertake a big investment in their building now, like a big retrofit, that they won't be asked to return again and retrofit to a new standard, a few years later. Next slide, please. One tool we use in the development of this program is an inventory of possible concrete buildings. This inventory has helped us understand aggregate trends and how this building type shows up in San Francisco, but it has pretty serious shortfalls. The problem is that concrete buildings are really difficult to identify from the street. There are a lot of buildings in San Francisco that have concrete facades, but get their strength from a totally different material. So to really know if a building is concrete or tilt-up, an engineer needs to look at the building's drawings or building's interior. To give you a sense of this list accuracy, we did we reviewed a sample of 622 building drawings last summer and were able to eliminate almost 2/3 of the 622 that we reviewed. Next slide. So that brings us to the first part of the introduced legislation. This legislation would set up a building inventory assessment program or screening program, if that rolls easier off the tongue, to give us a more accurate list of potentially at-risk concrete and tilt-up buildings. So this is the only mandatory part of the program. This is owners of approximately 4,000 buildings would be required to hire an engineer to complete and submit a screening checklist to the Department of Building Inspection. This checklist would have some really basic building information, including, what type of structural system is this, and the estimated cost to complete this checklist, according to our consultant, and again, this was done in 2022, but their estimated cost is about $300 to $3,200 per building in engineering fees. Next slide. So this is an approximate timeline. The ordinance has not officially passed the Board of Supervisors, but we estimate that the ordinance effective date would occur in June. Then from June to December, there's a period where no action is yet required of building owners. And then from December through this year, from June of 2027, so 18-month period, that's the time period that building owners subject to this program would have to fill out a screening form and submit it to DBI. Next slide. The two categories of people who would be subject to this program are first, building owners who receive a notice from DBI that their building is on this list of possible concrete or tilt-up buildings. And I want to be clear that the list has not yet been finalized. There was a version of it that was obtained via an information request, but that is not the official version. We're finalizing the list over the first 6 months. The other category of building owners who are required to submit a screening form under this program are those who own a concrete or tilt-up building as defined in the ordinance that we have missed, so to say. So that's not on our list of possible concrete buildings. Next slide. The second part of this legislation is that it establishes voluntary retrofit standards to support building owners who are ready to retrofit now. So those who are planning to undertake a conversion or want to just do a retrofit now and just want to know that the city won't come back and require them to do another retrofit later as part of a mandatory program. So this ordinance establishes 2 voluntary retrofit standards. There's 2 options for concrete buildings, and one of the 2 new options is a new option that we developed with our technical consultants, which can produce more efficient retrofits. Next slide. Thank you. I am happy to answer any questions and looking forward to hearing the group's thoughts.
Great. Thank you, Laurel. Looks like we have a question from Anne.
I have a question. When you say you did outreach to different building owners, there are a lot of nonprofits in the South of Market and the Mission that are not tied to affordable housing. They own their own buildings. And as you know, nonprofits right now, many of the organizations, we have a lot of them in the Mission that are now 55 and 65 years old, nonprofits. And the reduction in funding and what's going on in the federal government, everything is topsy-turvy. So how do you plan on incorporating their needs since their budgets are so tight? I have one client that's purchasing, and that has another thing is that it has historic value because those buildings were built, a lot of those warehouse type buildings were built after the 1906 earthquake, and there are plenty of them all over in the Mission, and some of the buildings are owner in the same way as the South of Market. How do you plan? Is there a step that they can do this? Because some of them are large floor plates, so they're not small floor plates. How do you plan to incorporate that? And then the second thing is, I think you might do some outreach to some of the architects and structural engineers that are already working on these buildings and see if there are going to be any impact on small repair changes to whether or not it kicks in a whole full seismic upgrade. So you need to take a look at that because it'll be a lot of pressure on these nonprofits that have been investing in these properties. That's what if you could tell me that, that would help me, that somehow you've done outreach to these different type of owner, nonprofit sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. I appreciate the question. I can't claim that I've spoken to the specific nonprofit owners that you're referencing. The two nonprofit housing developers that were on our stakeholder working group were the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation and Chinatown Community Development Corporation. We heard from both of them similar concerns that margins for nonprofits are extremely thin. And that's one of the reasons this is not a mandatory retrofit program. We know that there is just really huge challenges to accessing the capital needed to do one of these retrofits. And so right now, what felt appropriate was giving guidance to the people who are ready to do this, who have the capital to do this, who are interested in pursuing this now, and to collect more information on what our risk is. Let me just look at your questions. Oh, and then in terms of your question about concerns about a small repair triggering a large retrofit, this current legislation doesn't impact the trigger. So it doesn't change the 2/3 trigger or any of the triggers that might impact seismic work. As part of this legislation, the retrofit is completely voluntary. Does that answer your question?
I just want to make sure too, because I haven't read the legislation, if occupancy will trigger it too, a change in occupancy.
The current legislation, so there are things in the existing building code that trigger seismic retrofits, but no part of the current legislation will trigger a seismic retrofit. The retrofit portion is completely voluntary in this current legislation. Here, I'll link the legislation in the file in case that helps.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anne, for your question. Patrick, would you be able to introduce the next presenter?
Yeah, thanks for the great conversation, Laurel. Next up, we have Tate Hanna, DBI's legislative manager, to speak about the Code Streamlining Committee. Tate?
Thanks very much, Patrick. Again, Tate Hanna, Legislative Affairs Manager at DBI, here to discuss the Code Streamlining Committee. If you go to the next slide, please. So DBI has established the Code Streamlining Committee under this sort of PermitSF umbrella to really effectuate the goals of PermitSF, trying to make things faster, easier, more consistent, increase transparency of the department. And so what the Code Streamlining Committee is looking to do, it will be looking at all local amendments added to the San Francisco Building Code and existing building code. The goal of the committee would be to identify at least 50% of these existing local amendments for potential streamlining. Next slide, please. So to do this review, DBI tried to pick 4 senior staff members that have years of experience and are familiar with the code and come from sort of a different licensing and certification background. So we had a principal engineer, a structural engineer, a certified access specialist, and a senior building inspector. Those folks met regularly to identify and encapsulate all of the local amendments for review. That totaled 507 provisions, and additional review whittled those down, to 283 provisions that were flagged for additional review. We're going to be continuing that review of those 283, trying to see if they should be maintained, if they should be simplified, updated, or removed. Next slide, please. And so again, that evaluation process really looked at these four main points. It was either unnecessary or outdated policies or practices that don't apply. Oftentimes, there's a lot of ordinances that get put into the building code that maybe that program has sunset and the code language didn't quite get removed. And so this is just a cleanup of those sort of outdated code sections. Next would be a provision that does not add meaningful health and safety benefits. There have been amendments to the San Francisco code that have been in place for potentially decades and just haven't been reviewed to see if they're still providing that benefit that they were intended to. Next would be it appears in the wrong section of code. So as I mentioned, a lot of local ordinances will put those programs in Chapter 1A of the building code. This occurs in other sections as well. And really, frankly, those sections should probably be placed elsewhere. And so we're looking to just sort of simplify the reading of the text for folks, make it very clear which sections should apply to what, and just sort of streamline the legibility for people. So the committee has been doing this review. We're nearly halfway through, and final recommendations will be put together, shared with the internal executive team at DBI, and then brought to the PermitSF team to get feedback. Next slide, please. Once we've got the executive team and PermitSF team review, feedback, and approval, we'll be sure to be doing some extensive stakeholder outreach. That's going to include construction and trade associations, labor organizations, neighborhood associations, and then partnering with the supervisor's offices to make sure that constituent concerns and general community concerns are being addressed as well. Once we've gotten that feedback, both from the executive and PermitSF team, and then from stakeholders in the city and in the industry at large, that's when we'll turn to the city attorney's office and begin working on actual legislation that will revise these building code provisions. Next slide, please. And so those pieces of legislation will be reviewed by the Code Advisory Committee, the Building Inspection Commission, and then it'll move over to the Board of Supervisors, where it'll be heard at the Land Use and Transportation Committee, and then by the full board. And so all four of those points will be places where the public can be heard and voice any potential concerns, voice any support for these changes, offer additional recommendations. And so this will be a really public process. All these ordinances will have to be reviewed by all four of these bodies. Additionally, we have established the email that you see in front of you, dbi.coderevisions@sfgov.org. That email is a general landing place for any suggestions that you may have. We're really trying to take a holistic review of the building code and existing building code, really trying to pare down unnecessary local amendments. And if you feel that there's a change in there that you'd like to see made, please feel free to reach out. The one caveat that I'm sure most folks on this call know is we can't reduce beyond state code. Can't be any less stringent than state requirements. And so that's sort of the caveat here, but we are looking to change the roughly 1,000 pages of local amendments made and taking any and all feedback. Again, it can be sent to dbi.coderevisions@sfgov.org. I believe that covers my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Tate, for your presentation. Do we have any questions in the chat? Or I don't see any hands raised. Give it just 5 more seconds. Oh, looks like we got a hand raised by Michael Torone. Michael, take it away.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Are there similar efforts happening in other departments around clearing up legacy code? So this is great that the building department's doing it, but like, is DPW and planning also looking into kind of cleaning up some of this code? I can see this being relevant for things like the parklets for DPW, and planning probably has a couple old, outdated codes that aren't being used anymore. So I guess that's my question. Are other departments doing this besides building?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Michael. Obviously, Director Hillis is on the line, so I'll let him speak for planning. But I think the general perspective is that PermitSF is sort of taking this as a holistic approach. So DBI is certainly reviewing all local amendments, but I think PermitSF is looking at the various code sections under that umbrella and looking for streamlining opportunities. But I'll turn it over to Director Hillis.
Yeah. I mean, just to reiterate what Tate said, yeah, we are. I mean, this is part of our effort. Some of the code changes we're making relate to kind of this just outdated code, but even the police code has provisions in it that are outdated. So yes. But if you run into ones that you think, we should change or just aren't relevant, let us know too, but we are doing that as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We have a question from Ava Farab in the chat who asks, are there plans to adopt Assembly Bill 176, Education Finance Education Omnibus Trailer Bill into the San Francisco Code?
I am not familiar with that bill on hand. Looking it up, it looks like that's the general budget bill or a budget trailer bill. And so typically we wouldn't be, unless there's a specific program in there that would require local adoption, budget trailer bills passed by the state they supersede any local code. So when it is implemented, it was passed, but it just takes effect at the state level and supersedes any local codes. I'm not familiar enough to know if there were specific programs in it that we would need to adopt locally, so I can't speak to that now, but if there's specific questions around that, I can throw my email in the chat and happy to have any follow-up conversations.
Great, thank you, Ava. I don't see any more questions, but in the meantime, I believe Mary Wilkinson Church would like to talk about concurrent reviews, so I'll give her the time and space for that. Mary, take it away.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. If I'm an unfamiliar face, my name is Mary Wilkinson Church. I am the Acting Deputy Director for Permit Services for the Department of Building Inspection. I just wanted to take a moment to address the concerns related to concurrent review, because I know that those are very real concerns, and we've heard a few of them up until the point of PermitSF, but we've definitely heard more about it from the public forums that we've had with PermitSF. I want to clarify that there is a project that is currently that we're currently undertaking at PermitSF, and it is a shot clock project in which we can make some determinations cross-departmentally as to some acceptable timeframes for in-house review. And as part of that shot clock project, we're currently working with the other departments to understand, the amount of time that it takes to actually assign a project and have it in the hands of a plan examiner, and then how long different project types are taking for review, and making some determinations so that we can really clarify, I think, the concurrent review process. So what we should be able to do out of this project with PermitSF is we should be able to provide a little more predictability in the in-house review project as to essentially having an understanding of how long it may take for your project to be assigned. Once it is assigned to a plan examiner, how long will the first round of comments take? If you are required to resubmit because you did receive comments, then how long will it take the re-review to take place? And so the idea around that is to be able to sort of formulate these timeframes for each department to be reviewing concurrently. I think although we have definitely sort of overcome parts of the linear process, I think as Rebecca did point out, different departments are kind of coming in and performing reviews at different times right now, based upon, their backlogs, their staffing, whatever challenges they may be facing. And so I think where that lands for the applicant is in some frustration, because I don't think that they're really able to have that predictability around when their projects will be fully reviewed and when they can respond to comments. So we are trying to address that through a project that we're doing through PermitSF. So I just wanted to note that so that everyone is aware. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mary. I do not see any more questions. Patrick, what do you think?
All right. Just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our presenters for your presentations and for taking all the questions. Our next PermitSF customer forum will be Wednesday, July 23rd, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks again.